Dan, I got to tell you, last week's episode is still on my mind.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm still sitting here thinking we could have probably sat there for 3 more hours and
I
talked to
agree.
Harry.
So Harry Watt was our interviewee last week. And, I don't know, man. It was just such a joy to talk to him. He's very knowledgeable and he just knows a lot of stuff, and he knows a lot of people that knows a lot of stuff. And he certainly shared it with us. I hope everyone, well, looking at the number of people that downloaded that episode, it looks like there was a lot of people that enjoyed it too.
Right. I think it was I think it was the highest downloaded episode for the first day that we've had.
Really?
So, yeah, it was a big hit. And the thing that was interesting is, like, we kind of talked and touched on a few topics, but then it felt like we could have just stayed on that topic for a lot longer. It was just so much knowledge being shared.
I think so. That's a good observation, Dan, because, we were talking about, and then there was all the other stuff that he had mentioned that he could talk about. But I don't know. I start feeling guilty after about an hour of keeping someone's time. But serious, every topic that we brought up could have been another month's worth of episodes. You could really go into depth on them.
Yeah, it was great. And it got me, thinking a lot about, I don't know, maybe looking at things a little differently, and just thinking about, it's from a content creator's point of view now, if we dip back into the YouTube world and the social media world, just like thinking about different things and that we might be able to do to spark interest out there with our community and our followers, to maybe get them thinking a little differently about stuff.
Yeah, I could. I mean, I never viewed myself as a controversial person. I don't I don't have strong opinions, and I don't force them on top of others. It's not that I don't have opinions, but there was one comment that Harry made, and I'm not going to disagree with him, but I think if we had more time, I probably would have wanted to have a deeper discussion about it. It was, if you recall, we were talking about the future of firewood, and he had started talking about, well, he immediately brought up, the Puget Sound region of Washington State, which is Seattle and Tacoma, right?
Yeah.
And he had mentioned, that the urbanites are, pushing that legislation out in that region of the country. And so it seems like whenever you hear something like that, when I say you, I mean all of us, when people hear that type of legislation that's going on in that particular town, I think people like to escalate or expand the reach of a local law to include the entire country, or maybe they are projecting that that situation on where they live in their part of the country. And that is where I would have wanted to have a deeper discussion with Harry. Maybe we can get him back sometime, because I'm not going to disagree with him, but I'm also going to say that I don't necessarily see that as a problem. It's just, I mean, isn't that the way that, the system's designed, that the way our laws are? And I don't see it, Dan, as a call for alarm.
Yeah, I would agree. At first, I thought you were going to mention the bark up, bark down discussion, but if you want to go to this legislation part, yeah, we can get into that. But yeah, it's almost like, if the township I live in, if there's talk on the town board, there's an agenda item to possibly raise the road tax because we need, to improve our roads here. That doesn't mean that nationwide everyone's going to be having their taxes raised.
Yeah.
It's like one of those situations where it is situational, but it's very easy to be confused and then interpret it as, oh my goodness, they're doing that there. That means they're going to be doing it here.
Yeah, like out here, we had a city that passed a sign ordinance, for retail and all. And then, I mean, why isn't, I mean, why aren't people like screaming from the mountaintops, they're taking our rights away, okay, they're in a different state, but I mean, if they got limits on what kind of signs they can put up, I mean, that could equate to what we're dealing with out here, on clear on the other side of the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
Watch
know.
out.
Yeah, I don't know, Dan. I see this whole issue from a number of different viewpoints. All right. Number one, okay, I am a firewood producer. That's how I make my living. I am also a resident of a municipality. I'm also an American citizen who votes. I am also a person who appreciates clean air. I prefer that it be clean when I breathe it. Um, but I am also Dan. I was born in the 60s. I was raised in the 70s. I came of age in the 80s. And I can only speak for my experiences. But, for as long as I can remember, for the last 50 some years, all I've heard, at least on the political landscape, is states' rights, states' rights, states' rights. You know, we want to limit the size of the federal government. We want the states to have more authority. And beyond that, the best governance is local
Yes.
governance,
Local. Right. Yep.
So here we have a region of our country, the Puget Sound, which is the Seattle, Tacoma, Washington area. It has its own topography, its own geography, which, the way the weather comes in off the Pacific Ocean, um, that big concentration of two cities and a lot of houses, and the way that the mountains or the hills surround that Puget Sound traps air. Is that called the
Yep.
air inversion that Harry had mentioned?
Yes.
So
Yep.
pollution, and all the different sources of pollution trap the air, and the air quality out there can go south, particularly bad on certain weather phenomena. So the people of that region, they have their own thing going on. They elect their own democratically elected officials, and they try to live their lives the way that they want to do it. Okay. So who am I out here in Northeast Ohio to tell them how to live their lives? you know, they're passing they
Exactly.
they're passing an ordinance for their town, for their city, for their region. That's their business. It's none of my business.
And
You know?
yeah, and they're doing it for a specific reason that is specific to them. Like they
Yeah.
have, like you mentioned, the geography, how the area is situated, that's what causes it. So I'm assuming what happened is people, notice smoke coming out of chimneys and they immediately think, oh boy, this is what's contributing to the problem, because they always look for simple solutions, like, oh, look at all these people burning firewood. They're
Mm-hmm.
causing this. But out here in Wisconsin, we don't have a blockade or a set of mountains blocking the airflow.
Yeah, I
We
know.
don't have that. So
Or why would a town, that lives at the, that's a beach community by the Atlantic Ocean, they got to deal with things that are specific to ocean life and beach life, that
right.
we don't have to do out here in Northeast Ohio, where we got cows, out across my yard, But that's what I'm saying. If you were the people for these last years, or if you still are the ones screaming states' rights and this and that, well, here you go. I mean, this is exactly what you've been asking for. you know so now you're upset about a local community, a local city passing laws. Now, if you are a resident of that and you are a passionate firewooder like us, okay, I think you got some skin in the game. So get busy, engage in the democratic process and do what you can to create the world that you would like to see. But I don't know if it is right for people outside of that region to condemn it because you don't live there. And B, I think you're just getting yourselves all worked up, because there's laws that get passed everywhere all the time, and it's specific to what, a a desert town in Nevada, you know, a a a mountainous city in Colorado, a you know a karst topography geography city in Kentucky, that you got to deal with sinkholes and stuff that we don't have to worry about wherever else so it is specific to that area. And I think, yes, it's still reasonable. You always want to be vigilant, you always want to
Right.
protect what's in your interest and stuff. But I don't know, I sleep well at night, and maybe it's because I don't get myself all worked up over stuff like this. you know Maybe if I lived there I would feel differently, but maybe if I lived there I wouldn't be interested in firewood. I might be interested in throwing fish across the counter, whatever that market is up there. I mean, try
There you
pulling out
go.
here. If someone threw a fish at you in Youngstown, Ohio, you got trouble, you know and in Seattle, people travel there just to watch fish getting thrown across the counter. I mean, it's just the way it is. And I just don't like seeing people go to DEFCON 3 over something that is 5 states over from you. It's not even on the same side of the Mississippi. I don't know.
Yeah, I think people tend to see something happening and immediately assume if it's happening there, it could happen here. I need to be concerned about this, but
Yeah. Well, I still say that, I have already said this. Okay, be vigilant. But I am just saying from my part of the world right here, for instance, I had a guy email me, and he said, he was cautioning me about my profession because the government is going to take away all my rights. and they are banning firewood.
yes,
Firewood is
firewood
going to be
ban.
banned. So I replied to him, I said, there is literally no one trying to ban firewood. He was talking
No.
about me. And he replied back again. He told me that I am dead wrong. And he cited the Puget Sound and the United Kingdom. Okay. Which I don't live in either one of them, and it's just whatever happens in Europe happens in Europe. It's got nothing to do with us. Whatever happens in the Puget Sound, whatever happens in Seattle, okay, that's on them. And I'm not one to sit here and call them, out of touch or un-American because they're trying to improve their air quality. If that's the right way to do it, or if it isn't, that's on them. But out here where I am, I got other things to worry about. I'm
Yeah.
trying to I'm trying to worry about not getting stuck in the mud right now.
Yeah, it's I know a while back there was, I think, talk in New York, there was the same type of situation, but
Oh
when you
God.
looked into what was going on with that,
Ugh.
there was one word that always scares everyone, and it was regulation. And there was
Jeez.
regulations being passed, but it was being passed to improve the efficiency of the wood stove.
It
You know,
said nothing about firewood.
right.
I saw the same thing. And when I first saw it, I was like, "Holy cow, what's this?" You know.
Yep.
And instead of just forwarding stuff along and echoing it, I look into it, and I immediately conclude that this has got nothing to do with firewood or banning firewood. It was about improving air quality through stove, phase out. What Harry was talking about.
Right.
We need better
Gasification
stoves
and
on the market.
yep.
Yeah, stuff that not only are better, but that we can also afford to install in your house. So, and gosh, according to my calculations, Dan, um, the state of New York, no one in the state of New York should be allowed to be selling firewood right now, based upon what I have heard, over the last year and a half. And um, we there should also be there should also be no diesel fuel available because we had a 25-day supply left about 50 days ago. I'm just serious. I mean, come on, people. When you hear these kind of comments, all right, look into it. And like when I heard this thing about New York, I was like, holy cow,
Yeah, that's close
Um,
to you. That's
well,
yeah,
you also think too, New York State is an interesting state because it's got kind of like, one of the largest cities in the world in it, you know?
yeah.
And then there's a couple other cities, Buffalo, Albany. Okay. And then you got pretty much farmland, you know? So I'm sure that there's a lot, the city of New York they're urbanites. They live in a city. Their lifestyle is a little bit different than people that live in Watertown or Malone or Jamestown out my way. You
Yeah.
know, okay, but guess what? I don't live in New York, so like I said, I worry about my own thing out here in Ohio, but I look into it and I Google, is firewood being banned in New York? And the first 5 or 6 returns on Google were country music radio stations websites. So I am immediately suspicious. I guess I'm sure they're nice
Right.
people and
Yeah.
stuff,
It's
but a country music radio station or any radio station isn't going to have the same journalistic thoroughness that you would find from a I'm using my air quotes here, a legitimate journalism outlet. So yeah, and I'm right away. I was like, "What is this?" And then I look at the law that they were referring to, and it was complicated. It's all written in legalese that only lawyers would understand. But after you look into it, you're thinking, "This is come on."
yeah. It was all because there was the whole terminology and wording about reducing and the amount of firewood, and that was just because of the improved regulations on your wood stove. You would be consuming 40% less, or using 40% less wood. Well,
Right.
people misread that as they were cutting the amount of wood you could burn, so they're limiting how much you can have, and they're taking it away. And yeah, it
Oh,
was a lot of confusion, and I think just not being not knowing all the facts. And I mean, and it's nothing like you said, the country music radio station. There is a prime example of a media outlet that wants to gain and draw attention, so they probably use a headline like "New York State banning firewood."
with a question mark.
Yeah, with a
Because
question mark. But
yeah, because then they're saying we're just asking the question.
right, yes, yeah. But then that gets the attention of people who then don't read the article. They just see it, and oh my goodness, it
Yeah,
can
New
spread.
York, the state of New York is banning firewood. Oh my gosh, that's the end of the world. The next thing you know, they're going to pass a sign ordinance in Youngstown, Ohio.
Or and the other thing too that I don't think people realize is that sometimes there are regulations and laws passed for our benefit, like smoking on an airplane. A
Yeah.
regulation put in place to help those on the airplane who don't smoke have a better experience by not breathing in secondhand smoke. Something like that.
Yeah.
So there
Hmm.
are things that look at data, and they look at science, and they say, if we can find a way to have a wood stove burn off the gases like Harry was talking about, reburn the gas that's created from burning firewood, so that less emissions and less particulate matter is being put out into the atmosphere. It's better
Yeah.
for everyone.
That was, I can only speak for myself, but I never knew I never even considered the fact that wood smoke is bad for you. Because it smells awesome, but, like Oreo cookies taste great too. But but they're not necessarily good for. So now this has been a long learning curve that I've been on. So then you learn. There are some very good YouTube videos of actual footage of congressional hearings where all of the CEOs of the tobacco industry were testifying in front of Congress. And they were all asked specifically, does tobacco cause lung cancer, and is tobacco addictive? And every single one of them said no. They testified under oath that they said no, which we obviously now know that the exact opposite is true. But what we also know now at the time is that every single one of those jerks sat there and said that it doesn't, and they already knew that it did, because there was research that they had completed themselves, that showed. Okay, so where I'm going with this is that we learn things over time, that Oreo cookies are bad for you, sugar, and then certainly wood smoke is bad. I mean, what the heck, asbestos was once a great idea, you know
Yeah.
and then you learn otherwise. So here's wood smoke. I mean, come on. I mean, it's addictive. It's awesome. It's what draws, I think, a lot of us to firewood is that smell, because it just elicits great memories of, of youth and family and bonding. I mean, you could say the human race was, became a social being because of campfires, when we started
Yeah,
cooking our food.
totally.
Yeah, but then you find out that it's not good for you. It's got it's PM 2.5, which is the particulate matter in it that is small enough to pass directly through your lungs into your bloodstream, and it's carcinogenic,
Yeah.
and it's bad for you. And some people, I don't know, I don't feel an effect when I'm around wood smoke, but there are some people that are, some people are very vulnerable to wood smoke. And then,
Yeah.
you live in a part of the country or you're living in a congested city or a suburban area and wood smoke's a nuisance. What do you do?
And Harry kind of touched on this where he had mentioned New York, upstate New York, where, somebody burning wood up on the higher in the valley, their smoke just drifts down through the valley and kind of gets
Yeah.
trapped in that inversion zone. And so, like if you go back now to that, our first example, like think of, all the people out in the Puget Sound area that probably don't burn firewood, but they see the firewood being burnt and they see the smoke, and that's what their mind goes to. Like, oh my goodness, we have a problem. We need to
Yeah.
talk to
There was,
somebody.
there is a very recent case here in Cleveland, Ohio, in East Cleveland, a suburb. There, the houses are pretty close together. There's a lot of up and down duplexes, and some guy put in a wood fired pizza oven in his backyard. And
Oh.
the locals, all the neighbors come and they have these, they cook pizza and they have a good time. Well, there's a guy from two houses up who don't like it. you know and he's told him to cut it out and the guy won't, and so
Oh,
he
yes.
sued him and they went to court, and the guy with the pizza oven won. But those are the kind of things that you got to deal with, I guess. If I mean, I don't live in that kind of area, but that's where I chose to live.
Right. Yeah, love thy neighbor.
Unless they
Just
hate wood smoke, then I don't want them.
yeah, that's like I said, I think that's the one of the things that makes a lot of noise are the people who don't appreciate or don't understand the wood burning. And then if you look at that, like me as someone who burns, I have an outdoor wood boiler. Like I am conscious about my neighbors. I, know that if I burn garbage in my wood boiler, it's going to be noticed by
Right.
those around me. So I don't burn garbage in my wood boiler.
Yeah.
Like it's simple as that. Like I take on the responsibility of doing my good part and trying not to produce a lot of smoke because
Yeah.
why not?
I take care of my area and what I can do. I concern myself with my area and the politics of this area. If there's a national trend, there's a national trend, but you know what people are voting for in another part of the country, it's their problem, man. I got other things I got to worry about.
So if I hear you correctly, I think what I'm hearing is you only really care about yourself and you don't give a damn about anyone else.
Yeah, that's how
No.
things get spun. Yeah, well, if you got to know me, you'd know that's not the case, but I'm just saying.
But
I told you before, I got this one friend. If he isn't on medication, he should be. He he just has them. He has just got so much anger in him. He is just furious at politics and this and that and stuff. And he's got there's this one lady congressman. He just, if you bring up anything that even rhymes with her name,
mm,
he just, it'll just, and I told him, I says, she's not your congressman. She's not even from your state. Well, she's not supposed to be like you. She represents her area. you know, your congressman represents our area. What is so hard to figure out here? That's the way the system's supposed to be.
yeah.
So,
You need
that's
to
why I
get
get
that
back.
guy stacking some wood or splitting some wood. I think that would be therapeutic for him just to. Get your
Yeah.
mind off all that stuff.
I don't know. That's why I said there's people that there's literally people that lose sleep at night, worrying about stuff that um it's not shouldn't be on your list of things to worry about, you know?
Right. Yeah. If there was anything happening with, firewood, like a ban on firewood, you would hear it here first on the world's number one firewood podcast. So if you're listening, you can
Yeah.
rest assured we are here to tell you there's no one going to be stopping you from burning your firewood.
Yeah. Well, the new thing too now is the gas stoves, for cooking in your kitchen.
Oh yeah.
And so, I mean, that's got a lot of people's attention too, which I don't know, probably rightfully so. If I grew up with a gas stove and just the house that we bought had electric, and it was kind of a transition. I'm not used to an electric stove. But, here again, it's the same thing. We have been sold over all these years of clean burning natural gas, and it's combustion. And,
Right.
combustion is a chemical process, and it puts particulate matter and other gases and harmful fumes in the air that's not good to breathe.
Yep.
So, yeah. Now, is that right or wrong? I don't know. Do what you want to do, but no one is saying that, the 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 agents with black sunglasses are coming to arrest you if you have a gas stove. People like to I think people like to play games in their mind with that and think that that's actually going to happen, but guess what? It's not going to happen. So
You will still be cooking tomorrow morning your eggs
yeah.
on your stove.
One guy, he says, well, they just want everyone on electricity because they're trying to control us. And I was like, what does that mean? They already, why aren't we controlled by water then? We're on city water. What's the deal here with electricity, people? Come on.
Yep. I don't know.
Uh,
I think what was it that Harry said something about oh, he called himself a wood scientist. And you kind of sounded like that a little bit ago with this combustion talk and chemical bond breakdown.
well,
Is
that is nothing that had ever been. I had never even recognized that in my life. I didn't even know it existed until, I started selling firewood. I find this stuff interesting. I try to educate myself as
yeah.
much as I can. I like to educate my customers. I'm just not some hack that splits wood in half and sells it. I take my job serious. When Harry, I'm serious. I don't sell green firewood, like right now, I'm not taking any new customers. Everything that I have that's dry is already sold. It's just a matter of when I take it out to their house for delivery. So I don't sell green firewood. For me, it is an economic decision because, green firewood, it's, I'm in this industry to make a living, and that's why, people, I don't do pickup. People are just shocked that, well, why can't I come pick it up? It's because I don't want you coming to my house. All right. Number one. Number two, it's because I can sell it for almost twice as much if I deliver it. That's why,
Yeah.
and then I get that all the time. People will call for firewood and they're like, oh my God, that's too expensive. How much is it if I come pick it up? And I says, well, it would be the same price, but I don't have local pickup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not one of these damn firewood hobbyists with just a roadside stand in his front yard or anything like that. You're in this you're the real deal.
Like you, huh?
Those jabronis that are just, doing a little hobby here and there, they don't know anything about
Uh-huh.
firewood.
Yeah, I live by Dan, you do what you want to do, it is good enough for me. I just tell you the way I do it, and the way I do it works for me. It may not work for you.
Right. Yep.
Yep. Uh-huh. And that's why I say I just take care of myself and worry about myself.
But to Harry, another thing that Harry had mentioned was like, some type of association of firewood producers, eventually
Yeah.
at some point, I think there does need to be conversations about, you know, if you're a big producer and all you're doing is running out of dry wood and then pushing green wood, like, are you hurting the industry and are you hurting yourself?
Uh-huh. That could be
Because
a topic for another episode, Dan.
yeah, I
Uh-huh.
think that, anytime I see problems like what we've kind of been talking about here today, like I always look at what would be a solution from the side that's potential or allegedly creating the problem. So if wood smoke's a problem, like what's a solution from the wood burner or the stove or,
Hmm.
not just looking at, oh, okay, the only solution is end it. That,
Yeah, that's just
that,
not realistic. Come
right.
on. Yeah, it's
Yep.
just not realistic. There is a city, an eastern suburb of Cleveland. It's a very affluent town. And I know that there's a restaurant that uses firewood, and the city came to them and they didn't tell them to shut down, but they told them that they're going to nail them with a nuisance kind of a violation. So the restaurant said we installed scrubbers on their exhaust, their chimneys, which I don't know what
Yeah.
that is, but they use that term specifically, a scrubber, which takes away that wood smell. Because I guess it's close to like a condominium kind of a townhome area, and
Yep.
all the people there didn't like the smell of, which to me, I don't know. I scratch my head at that, but
Yeah, and that's one thing with like the new gasification boilers, outdoor wood boilers. That if I've watched a few videos, and I even talked to a dealer at the Paul Bunyan show, and he explained how, if you burn seasoned wood with this gasification unit, like you would hardly ever see smoke coming out because that smoke is
wow.
burned, reburned, and burned again, or whatever. Everything's burned off. It's clean. Coming out the stack, there's nothing there.
I don't know if you noticed me, Dan, when Harry was talking about, these stoves are so inefficient, that the smoke, there's no baffling him at all. I was kind of looking down and looking around because he was describing my furnace. He's like, these people need to get rid of these things, and I was like, oh gosh. Let's change the subject here real quick.
Right. Yeah,
Hmm.
and that's where I kind of get back to my point where I think if there are problems, I think with the advances in technology and just the way, I don't ever see that whole they're going to ban firewood thing or they're taking firewood away. I just think that there's going to be a solution, and, you know, it might involve you having to burn seasoned wood that's been split. I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe.
That was my understanding too, that these new stoves, and I have a friend that does chimney sweep, and he's like the only certified chimney sweep in our area. He says that these new style, he calls them EPA stoves, they are for real. They work. They use way, way, way less wood than a traditional Franklin stove does.
Yep.
They don't smoke. They are so efficient in burning off all the particulates out of the smoke that you don't even really see smoke coming out of your chimney. But he said what's limiting their effectiveness is the garbage wood that people are burning in them, the burning the green wood. And that's what, if you're buying firewood in February, I would tell any consumer, that's not the time to be buying firewood.
Check it. You better check it.
I don't know if I have no way of proving this, but I bet you I'm right. I think I'm the only person around that's got seasoned firewood still, but it's everything I have is sold, you know?
I have a little. But but
Yeah.
yeah, and the other big limiting factor I think is the cost, and that's where Harry was talking about a buyback program, or getting some tax credits for these new stoves, like stuff like that. I think, but and then also just the consumer getting past that, what you just called it, the EPA stove. I don't
Yeah.
want that EPA stove. I ain't gonna buy into
Yeah.
that government-owned wood stove.
Yeah. Well, like what Harry was saying about his dad, his dad loved throwing in green wood so it would
Yeah. Yep.
smolder all night long. Well, you put one of those in your expensive EPA stove and you're going to ruin the catalyst in it.
Oh, see this? Yeah, this episode, this past episode,
Uh-huh.
we're still talking about it. That's good stuff.
Here is the other thing that interests me. I don't, you and me, I mean, we talk a lot, but we don't we have other interests, but you and me kind of see eye to eye on this, and I know that there's a lot of people out there, that are just, whatever, the government and this and that and stuff. But, I probably agree with them on that as well. But where I differ is I don't take that leap, which I don't think is necessarily a logical leap. Or if it is possible, for the government to ban firewood, I'm saying it is very low probability. And if it is, it's specific to a region or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
What happens in Phoenix, Arizona, doesn't have an effect on Cleveland, Ohio,
No.
or Baltimore, Maryland. It's something specific to them. So I would. That's just the way I see things, though, Dan. I could certainly be wrong, and that's why I also don't say I have real strong opinions, because I'm always reading. I go with data. I don't know. Maybe I got a scientific mindset. And if I see something proven otherwise, I'll change, I'll change my opinion easy.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Well, and the other thing is I don't really pay a lot of attention to news and things like that. So I'm just kind of out of touch sometimes on some of these topics, but this one I'm
politics are not my hobby.
Oh God, no.
No, like some people enjoy it, they enjoy the sparring and the debate and stuff, but there are a lot of people out there. I mean, it affects them, and I don't mean in a healthy way, and I've just learned over the years, that's why there are no politics on my channel and on my YouTube channel. And that's just, cause I'm a free thinker. I don't follow party politics. I'm not a tribalist. If you are, good for you. But if there's ever a discussion about politics, I'll have everyone hating me because I don't agree 100% with either political party. I am who I am. I'm an individual, and my politics make sense to me.
There you go. And that is how a bill becomes a law.
I still know that word for word. I also know the preamble one. Shot heard around the world, conjunction junction.
Oh,
electricity. Oh, the Schoolhouse Rock. Yeah.
Ah, nice.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dan, let's table this discussion, because there's also a different way that we can take this with the role of the firewood delivery service or the firewood producer.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
And I'm all over the place on that too. I see every side of the argument. I don't really have, it's just weird for me to say this because I am a firewood producer, but I don't know. Let's just discuss this on a different episode, because, I see obligations, but I also see, it's the end user too. So I'm all over the place with that.
Yeah, I agree. Let's put a pin in that and let's strike up the band. And I think today has been a nice little talk about our previous episode. And if you're listening now and you haven't listened to the Harry Watt interview, go on back, check that out. You'll enjoy it. It was a great
that was
time.
The most, I love doing our podcast, but that was just an enjoyable. I remember when that came, I was like, wow, look how long we've been here.
Yeah.
Just talking. It was just so much fun. Yeah.
Yep. And maybe we'll have him back on. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. Well, he's retired now. He's got the time.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, Dan, let's strike up the band. Let's get out of here and let's go outside and play in the mud.
There you go. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the #1 firewood podcast in the world, the Wood Hounds. We'll see you back here next week, Wednesday, 5 a.m. Eastern.
And I want to tell everyone to be
cool
and stay
fun
and have a
great day.